In the past few years, urban exploration has slowly emerged as a trend. It's now normal to find people exploring abandoned houses and buildings in the middle of nowhere, hoping to find something creepy, or even something awesome to share on the internet. It comes with its fair share of risk, but for urban explorers, nothing beats a spooky or cool story to share. And sometimes people find the most amazing things while exploring these abandoned homes. From a metal casket found in San Francisco to a snake house, here are the 15 most incredible things found in abandoned mansions. Number 15. Metal casket found in San Francisco. How would you like it if construction workers discovered a casket underneath your house? You'd probably be shocked and horrified. In 2016, several workers unearthed a metal casket underneath a home in San Francisco. The casket was unmarked, and the body inside was incredibly well preserved. The little girl's 37-inch casket was airtight, which contributed to her body's preservation. The girl was lovingly put to her eternal bed with the way she had sprigs of lavender in her curly locks and rosary seeds on her chest. The discovery immediately captivated the interests of the locals at the time, and all of them asked the same question. Who was the little girl inside the casket? Because the casket was 140 years old when it was found, it took almost an entire year for the researchers to determine her identity. But when they did, many felt dejected after hearing the poor girl's story. The girl inside the coffin was Edith Howard Cook. She was the second child of Horatio Nelson and Edith Scoofy Cook. The young girl was barely 3 years old when she died on October 13, 1876. Despite being born into a relatively decent family, Edith passed away due to marasmus, a severe form of malnutrition that led her body to waste away in the last few months of her life. After young Edith passed away, another little girl was born into the family, Ethel. Unlike her sister, Ethel grew up healthy and even became a part of San Francisco's socialites. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now. Number 14. Safe left behind by Pablo Escobar. Pablo Emilio Escobar is one of the most infamous criminals in history. He dabbled with illicit drugs, and through it, he became one of the wealthiest criminals in the world. There's more to Pablo Escobar's story than his illicit activities. Some people claim that he was a real-life Robin Hood who helped the needy, while some say he was a merciless lawbreaker. Regardless of what you think of the late Colombian drug lord, it doesn't change the fact that he was incredibly wealthy, and even years after his death, he still had a lot of secrets. A week after Pablo Escobar's Miami Beach mansion was demolished in 2016, a worker stumbled upon a 1,325-pound safe as he tore down the last walls of the establishment. 2 safes were found throughout the whole demolition. The first safe was stolen before it could be opened, and so its contents remain a mystery to this day. Now, I know you're probably wondering what's inside the second safe, but here's the thing. The safe was locked in a bank vault, and it will stay that way until the current owners decide to open it. The property was bought by Christian de Berduer, founder of the Miami chain Chicken Kitchen, and his wife, TV journalist Jennifer Volpe, in 2014. The couple decided to demolish the mansion because they didn't want the property to be associated with the late Colombian criminal. Because the safe was incredibly heavy, some people claimed that the safe contains diamonds or gold. Well, if this theory is true, then I guess buying the entire property for $9.65 million was definitely worth it. Number 13. Car collection. Recently, an explorer stumbled upon a big estate somewhere in the United Kingdom that housed an entire collection of luxury cars. It was said that the mansion was the property of a famous artist from the 18th century before it was inherited by an heiress who died in 1914. The entire estate was auctioned in 1952, but it was sold again in 1958. It became a tourist attraction for more than 2 decades until it was bought by a wealthy man from London who left the entire place abandoned for 15 years. Despite years of being left alone, a huge part of the estate was still in great condition, much to the delight of the explorers. The previous owners seemed to fancy the Ford Escort. When exploring inside, they found 4 to 5 rare car models. They also found an early Land Rover Defender and another unidentified car model from the 1960s. These cars would have sold for thousands after being restored, but unfortunately, the cars found in the estate were already in an advanced state of decay, and almost every single one of the classic cars couldn't be salvaged anymore. Number 12. Multi-million-dollar painting found in home's attic. If you recently bought a big property, you might want to try your luck and see if you can find anything inside the house that looks valuable. After all, you might just hit the jackpot, just like these homeowners in Toulouse, France. In 2014, two homeowners decided to finally fix their leaky ceiling. It was a tedious job that involved breaking the sealed door in their attic. However, instead of a bare room, they found a 5-foot by 6-foot painting that turned out to be the work of Caravaggio, one of Italy's greatest painters. Dating between 1600 and 1610, the painting depicts the biblical scene of Judith beheading a Syrian general. I know, quite a macabre piece, but for painting enthusiasts, this canvas was priceless. Many experts were in doubt about the authenticity of the painting, but France still didn't want to let go of the painting regardless of who created it. If it turned out to be authentic, it would cost around $130 million after all. One thing is for sure, the two homeowners never thought that they would find something incredible while trying to fix their leaky ceiling. Number 11. Ring with the original owner's hair. In 2019, an unidentified woman claimed that she had found a ring on her late father-in-law's property. She claimed that it belonged to the famous author of Jane Eyre. The ring bore the inscription of the date of her death in 1855, as well as her name, Charlotte Bronte. Amazingly, the ring also had a hinge, and inside was the plaited hair of what seemed to be the author of the famous book. Charlotte Bronte was an English novelist and poet. She began writing poetry as a child, and in her teen years, she wrote stories and staged plays with her siblings. As a woman living in the 1830s, she dealt with a lot of literary rejection, and although her work was great, many paid no attention to her books. And so, Jane Eyre used a gender-neutral pen name, Currer Bell. Finally, in 1847, when Smith Elder and Company published Jane Eyre, she received the attention and praise she deserved. Sadly, she died when she was only 38 years old, while pregnant. With how renowned Charlotte Bronte is, the ring with her hair has a price tag of about $20,000 or more. Number 10. Sealed time capsule. There are a lot of museums around the world that try to recreate what homes would look like decades ago. However, nothing beats the authenticity and the vintage beauty of an actual Parisian apartment that has been left untouched for about 70 years. The apartment was left by its owner in 1942, and although she never came back, the owner continued to pay the rent until her death at the age of 91. When it was finally opened and examined, the authorities found a wonderful time capsule. The entire apartment looked just the same as it did more than 70 years ago. The luxurious Parisian apartment was adorned with books, paintings, and other vintage furniture. But the highlight of the apartment was a painting created by Boldini. It was a painting of Madame de Florian, a woman of extraordinary beauty who was famous for having a list of well-known lovers. The painting was valued at about $3.4 million and is considered one of the greatest art discoveries of the century. Number 9. 30 pounds of silver coins. Most of the time, demolition workers don't really find anything valuable while working, but sometimes they come across something worthwhile. In 2014, several city workers in St. Cloud, Florida discovered 30 pounds of silver coins inside the house of a hoarder. The house was allegedly abandoned and severely neglected. After being fined extensively, the owner couldn't afford to pay, and the government eventually seized the house. The entire house looked more like a jungle with tall grass, unsafe trees, loose metal, and pests. And so, when the workers were tasked to demolish and clean the entire area, they didn't really hope to find anything valuable on the property. All they wanted was to get the job done. However, when they found the coins, all of them were incredibly delighted. According to them, the more they dug, the more silver coins turned up. In the end, the workers gathered 2,082 silver coins in total, and many of them date back to 1917. The owner of the house showed up after hearing about it, but he disappeared once again after being informed that he still owed more to the city than what the silver coins were auctioned for. The city ultimately decided that all the proceeds of the auction would go to charity. Number 8. Aston Martin. Earlier this year, a lucky man stumbled upon an abandoned property somewhere in New York. The entire estate was in such a state of ruins that at first, the man thought he wouldn't find anything valuable inside. But after snooping around, he stumbled upon quite an incredible find, an old 1962 Aston Martin DB4. Unfortunately, the entire vehicle was covered with rust, and it was far from the luxurious vehicle it once was. You might be thinking that this car is just junk, but car enthusiasts don't think so. In fact, in a recent auction, a restored 1962 Aston Martin DB4 GT was bought for a staggering $9.5 million. Yes, I'm not joking. That's why if the restoration is done right, DB4s can also sell between $200,000 to $700,000. There are people out there who specialize in car restorations, so just in case you have an original luxury car lying around, you might want to have it checked out before trashing it. Number 7. Prohibition-era whiskey. Sometimes legends have a small figment of truth in them, but most of the time, legends are just legends. That's why when a couple heard that their century-old house was built by a notorious bootlegger, they didn't really think much about it. But years later, when the house was renovated, they discovered something that changed their mind. More than 66 bottles of whiskey from the Prohibition era were found within the walls and floorboards of their house. I guess the bootlegger legend was true after all. It turned out that the original owner of the house was a German known as Count Adolf Humpfner. He was featured in several newspaper articles from the early 20th century, and many articles named him as a man of mystery who took part in several questionable activities. It seems like Adolf sold goods during the Prohibition of 1920, when the manufacture, transportation, and sale of various types of alcohol were banned throughout the country. Of course, many people tried illegal means to obtain booze, and Adolf was one of the people who took advantage of the Prohibition to make money. The nationwide Prohibition lasted from 1920 until 1933, and although it was in effect for longer than many expected, it was quite difficult to enforce. The prohibition of alcohol was one of the ways the government tried to reduce crime and corruption and improve health in America. Needless to say, it was a noble goal, but it was difficult to uphold in the end. Number 6. $3 million worth of baseball cards found in home attic. If you're a baseball enthusiast, you most likely know which cards cost $1 and which ones go for millions. It might be hard to believe for people who aren't into the sport, but somewhere out there, someone owns a card that can be sold for more than $1 million. For instance, in 2012, a lucky homeowner decided to move the things stored in his attic. That's when he stumbled upon a cardboard box filled with up to $3 million worth of 1910 top-condition baseball cards. The cards were from a rare series and are considered to be Hall of Famers in any sports memorabilia. The cards were allegedly left behind by the owner's late grandfather, who unknowingly preserved the cards by carefully stashing them away, thinking they had little value. In the end, his little possession turned out to be a multi-million-dollar inheritance for his grandchildren. Number 5. Fairy skeleton and other strange creatures. Now this is definitely one of the freakiest discoveries. In 1960, several construction workers were tasked to clear an old abandoned mansion that was once the home of Thomas Theodore Merlin and give way to a new residential neighborhood. With respect to its previous owner, the workers cleared the entire home to check for anything valuable. They didn't expect to find much, but they were all floored when they found several thousand small wooden boxes in the basement. Inside, they found the bodies of strange mythical creatures like fairies, goblins, and dwarves. As it turned out, Thomas was a crypto-naturalist who was fascinated with life forms that only existed in fiction. Many of the creatures and artifacts found inside the boxes were nothing more than myths. It didn't make the entire discovery any less fascinating, though. I mean, just take a look at all these carefully crafted bodies. Anyone who stumbled upon them would definitely think that they were real at first. But this also poses the question, what if, just what if, all of these discoveries were actually true? And Thomas knew something more than us before he passed away. And now, it's time for today's topic. A lot of people are now getting into exploring abandoned places. Most of the time, all they find are trash and unused items. But sometimes, they stumble upon things that are completely unexpected. Take, for example, this anonymous user who shared their once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Needless to say, what they discovered in an abandoned mansion shocked the whole world. According to the explorer, he found an abandoned mansion in the middle of nowhere. He decided to check it out with his friends in hopes of taking cool photos. But they found something more valuable. Inside, they found a cabinet filled to the brim with money. Initially, they thought that the money was fake, but upon closer look, all the cash seemed authentic. Because of how odd the entire situation is, the two decided to just take several stacks of the money and immediately leave the place. Many people claim that perhaps they've stumbled upon the late owner of the mansion's savings, while some claim that they've stumbled upon a secret hideout used by people dabbling with illicit activities. If you were the one to discover a lot of money in the middle of nowhere, would you take it? Or would you be a little skeptical too? As always, comment down below with the hashtag today's topic and let us know your opinion about what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 4. Stash of money. Here's a similar story of an urban explorer discovering more than he initially expected. In 2014, an explorer went to the coordinates given to him by a friend. All he wanted to get out of the exploration was several photos and maybe some cool memorabilia. But he wasn't hoping for much. After all, most abandoned houses nowadays have already been looted or vandalized. When he went inside the house, he found incredible artifacts that ranged from old watches to letters and photos. He also found several canisters and medicine bottles in the house. As it turned out, the family who lived in the home suffered from a tragic fate. One of their family members died due to cancer. The home was eventually given to two siblings who eventually passed away. Since then, the house was left in ruins. The history and story of the house were enough of an adventure for the explorer, and yet he found something more valuable inside the abandoned house. Underneath the smelly mattress, he found a stash of tightly rolled US and Canadian money that was nearly $6,800. The dates of the bills span from the mid-1960s to the 1970s. You might think that the explorer kept the money to himself, right? Finders keepers, after all. But no, he did something incredible. He traced back the history of the house and determined the living relatives of its past owners. There, they found the granddaughter of the most recent owner of the house, and they gave her all the money they found inside the house. Every last penny of it. Needless to say, the woman was incredibly overwhelmed by the situation. I must say that not a lot of people would have gone through the effort of tracing back the family's lineage just to return a stash of hard-earned money. Number 3. Stash of guns. In 2019, authorities decided to explore, or rather inspect, a mansion in a neighborhood in Los Angeles. Instead of finding something like cash, they found 1,000 firearms. As it turned out, the mansion belonged to one of the most famous and wealthy families in America, the Getty family. What made this discovery more horrifying is that the mansion was inside a posh and lovely neighborhood where the properties sell for millions. The authorities claimed that they never would have thought a huge arsenal of guns would be hidden in one of the lavish mansions. The authorities never learned how the guns ended up in the estate, but the property is owned by Cynthia Beck, a Los Angeles real estate magnate. She had 3 daughters with Gordon Getty, the oil heir of J. Paul Getty. Basically, the whole family was filthy rich, and perhaps these stockpiles of weapons were essential in one of their trades. Number 2. 10,000 radiated tortoises. Radiated tortoises can be found in the extreme southern and southwestern parts of the island of Madagascar. These animals can live between 40 to 50 years in the wild, but in captivity, they can live for more than 50 years. While their expected lifespan is longer when they are raised in captivity, I think nothing can justify putting thousands of them inside a small enclosed space with no proper facility. And that's why the authorities were incredibly appalled when they discovered 10,000 radiated tortoises crammed in a house in Toliara, Madagascar. The gruesome discovery was announced by authorities in 2018. They decided to inspect what seemed to be an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere because of suspicious activities. As it turned out, thousands of tortoises were crammed inside the house to the point that there wasn't even room for the poor animals to move. The authorities immediately moved quickly to relocate the tortoises to a safe space. It took 6 trucks for the tortoises to be transferred to Turtle Village, a private wildlife rehabilitation facility. Luckily, most of the animals recovered after being fed and given enough space where they could move. This rare breed is actually illegal to own in the United States, although they need the right permit and papers. Because they continue to be illegally sold and transported, the number of radiated tortoises continues to rapidly decline. Number 1. Snake House. Do you think a 5-bedroom rural home for a little over $100,000 is a great deal? For many, it is. A lot of people would definitely grab this offer and secure the property. But there's one tiny catch. You'll have housemates that aren't human. This is the Snake House in Rexburg, Idaho. The house has a reputation for being on and off the market, with dozens of different families being tricked into thinking they found the perfect home, only to be chased away by the many garter snakes inside the house. While these reptiles aren't really venomous, they're known to be feisty, and they'll bite if they feel threatened. One of the previous homeowners claimed that living inside the house was a horrible experience. They could hear the snakes slithering in the walls, and their water even tasted like snakes. Apparently, they were told by the real estate agent that the snake story was completely made up, but that turned out to be a lie. And that's why if you see a house on the market posted for a relatively low price, there's almost always a catch. All of these finds are quite shocking, but which one surprised you the most? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you have a similar experience, be sure to share your story in the comments as well. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on the screen right now. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.